Welcome to a virtual tour of Delaware Seashore State Park, specifically the Indian River Life-Saving Station, which is located about 2 miles north of the Indian River Inlet Bridge on the ocean side of Delaware State Route 1. My name is Lowell, and I'm a seasonal naturalist in the park, and I'm going to be your guide today. We're standing in the Indian River Life-Saving Station Museum. This station was built in 1876 on this site. And as I've greeted visitors here over the years, I've found that not many visitors know anything about the United States Life-Saving Service, which is a federal government agency that existed between the early 1870s and 1915. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about why the U.S. Life-Saving Service was established and what its accomplishments were during its 4-decade history. A little background. In the early years of our country, a lot of commercial product and passenger transportation was on water. Our oceans, our bays, and our rivers were the highways for transportation for many years. Along came railroads and cut into the importance of water transportation. But even after our railroad system was completely built out across the country in the very late 1800s, water transportation still played a big role in getting product and people moving around the country. And I would argue that's still true today in 2020. Well, in the early years of our country, plying the sea with a ship was actually a pretty dangerous activity. Folks, thousands of lives were lost along the Atlantic coast. Ships were lost at sea because of storms, because of running aground, and because of breaking up in a storm. And I want to tell you about a famous shipwreck, a tragic event that occurred in 1785, just 1 or 2 miles away from where I'm standing right now. In September of 1785, the Faithful Steward, a wooden sailing vessel, left Ireland bound for Philadelphia. And they ran aground up somewhere around 100 yards from shore, as I said earlier, about a mile or 2 south from where I am right now. Now, the winds were high, the surf was dangerous, and the two together acted to rock that boat back and forth, testing the wooden structure of the ship. The day after it ran aground, the Faithful Steward broke up. Now, on its journey here, it had cargo, and it had a roster of 249 people as crew and cargo. As passengers, excuse me. So when the ship broke up, it tossed the passengers into the sea. 68 people survived. 181 souls perished in the surf. A very tragic event. But I want you to keep in mind that the wreck of the Faithful Steward was 101 years before this life-saving station was built. So another story came along in 1902. February 17th, 1902, a 4-masted schooner called the Anna Murray ran aground at night in a snowstorm about 2.5 miles south of the station here. Now, the big contrast between the tragic Faithful Steward story and the Anna Murray shipwreck story is that the life-saving station here at Indian River was open for business in 1902, and it was not in 1785. And so on February 17, 1902, a patrolman from this station, a surfman on patrol, saw the ship in distress, came back out to the station, mustered out a crew of surfmen, and the surfmen brought equipment to the shore, to the beach, very close to where the shipwreck was. And they put together the breeches buoy rescue system. So the breeches buoy rescue system starts with firing a black powder Lyle gun. And a 17-pound projectile is placed down the barrel of the gun, and a shot line, a rather light line, is attached to that projectile. And it is fired, and the projectile sails over the ship in distress and falls into the sea on the far side of the ship. The shot line then drapes down on the vessel in distress. Well, on that snowstorm night, trying to rescue the people on the Anna Murray, they fired the Lyle gun. It successfully went over the ship and started to come down, but it was so cold that night that the Anna Murray and its rigging was covered with ice. And the projectile fell into the sea beyond the ship, but the shot line, as it draped over the vessel, cut on the ice of the rigging. Now, a lot of times after the rescue, the surfmen on shore are able to bring that projectile back and use it again in a future rescue. That one was lost. But the important thing is that somehow the crew of the Anna Murray was able to grasp the important part of the shot line, the line going back to the beach, before it was swept into the sea. And so they started hauling on that line and brought out a little bit heavier line and equipment necessary to put up the breeches buoy rescue system. Now behind me is a mock-up of the breeches buoy system that is in the Indian River Life Saving Station Museum. So this side over here simulates the mast of a vessel in distress. And over on this side, we would have the parts of the system where the surfmen are working on the beach, okay? So one of the beauties of this rescue system is that the rescuers, the surfmen of the life-saving service, stay on the beach safely instead of launching a surfboat into a raging sea and trying to get alongside a vessel in distress. The rescuers are all on land. And the idea of the system is to send the breeches buoy out to the ship. And you can see that the breeches buoy is just a ring buoy with a pair of pants or breeches sewed into it. And the surfman can pull on a line and send this breeches buoy out to the ship. A member of the crew or a passenger gets in, the surfmen on shore get a signal, they pull on a different line and pull this back to shore. And they do that over and over again until everybody on the ship is saved. For the Anna Murray, there were 10 crewmen on board that snowy night, and every one of them was brought back to shore safely. There were no lives lost. So what is the effect of having the life-saving service in business? Well, here at Station Indian River, the Anna Murray wreck story with all 10 people aboard saved is just part of the story. Between 1877, when this station started operating, and 1915, over 400 lives were saved by the surfmen at this station. Now, the life-saving service nationwide had stations all along the Atlantic seacoast, around the shores of the Great Lakes, and a few stations out on the Pacific coast. Between the early 1870s and 1915, over 177,000 lives were saved by the United States Life-Saving Service. That's a tremendous legacy. Now, in 1915, the U.S. Congress merged the Life-Saving Service with the Revenue Cutter Service to form the United States Coast Guard. And today, just a little over 2 miles to the southwest of this old station, you will find modern-day Coast Guard Station Indian River Inlet. And there, the women and the men of the modern Coast Guard carry on the search and rescue mission that was formerly done by the surfmen here at Old Indian River Life Saving Station. And though the protocols have changed and the technique of rescue has changed, the spirit of service and the willingness to risk lives to save sailors and passengers in distress lives on through the women and men of the modern U.S. Coast Guard. So, I hope you'll be able to visit the Indian River Life Saving Station sometime real soon. The station is now a museum and you're welcome to visit. I'd like you to come and see where the spirit of the modern Coast Guard got its start.